Hey, yeah, what's up? This is Disciple Marcello Currents, rain back up in this anti-Illuminati all day, anti-telepathy all day, anti-cop all day, and everybody with him, yeah, boom. So guess what I found out? Ding, 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 guess what I found out? You know, I told you I'm doing a campaign for concerning the age of consent for sex, you know. And guess what I found out? Guess what I found out? The age of consent in America was even lower in the past than 16 and 17. Oh yeah. You ain't gonna believe this. So what this video is gonna be about, this is attached to now the overall history and information. This is going to be attached to the whole campaign, basically. But this video, as I said it off, is going to be labeled as the history of the age of consent in America. The history of the age of consent for sex. We're going to do a history video. So we're going to be talking about 1880. In 1880 in America, the age of consent was set at 10 years old and 12 years old. Yeah, folks. Now, it don't get no more in dangerous territory when adults are messing with 10 and 12-year-old kids now. This is, let's just look at it like this. This is another part of the horrific history of America. This is just another part of it. So it gets worse. In 1880, also there was a lower age than 16 and 17. The other age that was lower than 10 and 12 for the age of consent for sex in America was 7. 7 years old in Delaware. Seven years old in Delaware. So a fully grown man, not kids messing around, a fully grown man could have sex with a 7-year-old child. This is in 1880, y'all. 1880, like as in 1990, 1980, 1880. The year 1880, the age of consent was set at 10 and 12 years old, and Delaware had the lowest age of consent. I would say, I guess in America, maybe it was lower than that before 1880. I don't know. I don't know how bad this got. I have to do my research on that. But for right now, this is the lowest age I've found as far as the age of consent for sex in America. In 1980, Delaware allowed fully grown men to have sex with 7-year-old girls. Now, can you compare that to all over the world? No, you cannot. This is part of history, folks. This is part of history. And what I say in response to that, for all the people that you've witch hunted, the R. Kellys of the world, the Michael Jacksons of the world, consider your own history. That's what I'm saying. That's the caption also for this video. Consider your own history. Maybe you're ignorant of it. You had the age of consent in America set at 10 and 12 years old all across the country. 10 and 12 for fully grown men. And in Delaware, it was 7 years old. 7-year-old girls could have sex with fully grown men. Vice versa. women could have sex with 7-year-old boys. Let's not forget them. You know some of the females did it. Come on now, come on. This is human. These are humans we're talking about. Some of them had to be, if someone put it in law, it had to be male and female that was doing it. Humans are good and bad. Someone was doing it. In other words, someone was perverted enough as a fully grown adult to have sex with a 7-year-old boy. Not to mention the gay people. Well, they probably was in the closet, back then in 1880, but nevertheless, hey, a woman in Delaware probably was having sex with a 7-year-old boy because that was the age of consent. Now, if you wasn't pleased with my campaign talking about the age of consent presently, if you feel like our government pretty much stuck to what was logical, how about 10 and 12 years old and then 7 years old? And then they witch hunting R. Kelly like they never seen this before. And these judges know the law and they're sitting up there looking appalled like that's the worst thing they ever heard in their life. If I was a judge, the worst thing I would hear in my life is the age of consent of 1880. That's one of the worst things of American history. 10 and 12 for fully grown men. 7-year-old girls for fully grown men. That's in Delaware. In Delaware, the age of consent, I can't stress it enough, 7. What do a fully grown man want with a 7-year-old girl sexually? What do a fully grown woman want with a 7-year-old boy? Think about that. Now, what is somebody going to say about that? That means for all you people that like to trigger people and like to witch hunt people online with little kids, did you know that in Delaware, the age of consent for sex with humans was set at 7 years old? That's for all you that like to witch hunt people with little images, little kids running around in the videos, trying to trigger somebody. That's for you. You that set the little videos for kids running around. That's for you. The age of consent was set at 10 years old, 12 years old, all across the country in 1880. That's a pretty bad, funky history there. Because we all agree, 16, 17 was bad enough. But 10 and 12 for fully grown adults, that's absurd, okay? Nobody should, as a fully grown man should want, or a fully grown woman should want nothing to do with someone that's 7 years old and someone that's 10 years old or 12 years old, and you're a fully grown person, an adult. I don't care what times it was in. You had, along with those 7-year-olds, 10-year-olds, and 12-year-olds, you had beautiful 20-year-olds, beautiful 30-year-olds. What about them? You had beautiful 40-year-old women. You had the same thing with women. You had these, men in their 20s and 30s and 40s. But yet, out of all of them, in all those age brackets, as a fully grown adult, you chose to want the age of consent to be set at 7 years old. We're talking about laws here, folks. Laws cannot be compared even to what these pedophiles are doing. It can't be. You can't compare what pedophiles do with what laws do. Laws allow it to happen. Laws allow them to do what they want to do without anybody bothering them. So all across the country, the age of consent in 1880, I'm showing you the history of your country. That's why I say this is a history video. That age of consent for sex was either set at 10 years old or 12 years old, with the lowest being the state of Delaware at 7 years old. Now, I don't know, we have two different types of people in this country. We have those who like to forget history, turn a blind eye to it, not think about it, not ask questions, not hold anybody accountable. We like to, act like we should just let it all go. And then there are those like me that look at history and really see with most of it that nothing has really changed. Nothing has really changed in the mentality. Not to me. Nothing has really changed. It's just more now that people are more aware of what's going on. Back then, these laws set and they can't be communicated really. You don't got no TV, you didn't have radio. How is it really communicated? These people are out in the woods trying their best basically to survive. You see how much they got away with? That's what I'm trying to say. And in this case, America should consider its history. Consider the history. When you judge, that's all I'm saying. When you judge R. Kelly, when you try to witch hunt people that you think are pedophiles, consider your history. That's for the FBI. Consider your history. I know you know the law. All you police, you probably don't. But the FBI probably do. They have to pass tests concerning laws, I would imagine. I mean, would you want them to know? I mean, these are people who investigate people, for crying out loud. Shouldn't they know the law with their little investigations? So with your little investigations, FBI, you should be aware that in 1880, the age of consent was set at 10 and 12. This is the mentality of your forefathers that you call honorable, that you call noble. It's important to go back and see, okay, were they really noble? Were they really upright as adults? These are adults we're talking about. We're not talking, by the way, folks, we're talking about competent, fully grown men. We're not talking about kids making laws. We're not talking about kids messing around sexually. We're talking about fully grown adults like you and I, with minds like you and I, turn around and make laws with the age of consent being at 10 and 12 in our history. Now, would you set laws, right? Sit down. When you make laws, you got to understand what happens. There's writing. There's talkings. There's meetings. There's official stampings of these laws. And through all that process, their mind obviously is set at passing laws as fully grown adults that allow the age of consent for sexual activity to be at 10 and 12 all across the country, and even lower with Delaware having the laws set at 7 years old. These fully grown, competent men and women, fully adults, fully sound of mind, feels that it's a-okay for the age of consent to be at a single digit. This is for all you single digit people. They like to witch hunt with single digits. You like to see how people respond to 9, 8, 7, even lower. You like to see how people respond. Okay, for all you single digit witch hunting psychological warfare people, your country had the age of consent at a single digit, meaning not below 10 years old. A single number. Can't be no higher than 9 if it's a single number. Can't be no higher than 9 years old if it's a single number as the age of consent. And the age of consent was set at 7. Think about 7-year-old girls with fully grown adults. That's what was happening. I don't care what you say, how mature they was, cleaning, cooking. No. With fully grown adults, it's one thing if girls play around with another guy and, it happens. But as adults, they felt that was cool. Anybody over the 18 feeling like you want to have sex with a 7-year-old girl? Anybody over the age of 18, that's what I'm talking about. Not lower than 18, over 18. Not kids messing around under 18, over 18. Anybody over the age of 18 feeling like messing around with a 7-year-old girl? 18 now, let alone the ages they were passing laws, they were at least in their 30s and 40s. Thinking it's cool to have sex with a 7-year-old girl now in Delaware. Now, like I always say, you mad at me or you mad at yourself? Because you've been believing a lie. You've been under the impression that you've been in the law and order world, like they put these little shows on TV, like that's the present world you live in. When your laws are still unsophisticated, allowing the age of consent to be 16 and 17 in 40 states in America. So with all your law and order and sophistication and of technologies and your CSI world, your age of consent for sex in 40 states is under the age of 18. While you're watching all the technology and while they're making technology, while they're passing laws and getting patents on technology to invade your life, they have not considered changing and bringing the age of consent up to an advanced perspective of your culture and community. Because your community today in 2022 is not feeling the age of consent being under 18 in 40 states. Nobody's feeling that. Nobody is feeling that, bruh. There's nobody that's going to co-sign that. There's no person, famous, non-famous, even the homeless people are not going to co-sign 40 states allowing adults to have sex with children under any measure. But yet, that's what it is. And before that, the age of consent was 10 and 12. In Delaware, at 7. Now, let's go back to the histories of all these other countries. Do you think all these other countries like Russia, you think they had the age of consent at 7 at one point? Do you think all these other countries you criticize had the age of consent? Everybody didn't have it. You want everybody to, you think everybody's like you. You try to get everybody on your, you try to share the wealth as far as this situation. And everybody didn't have the age of consent at 7. Throughout all their whole history, some people didn't go that low. So see, now what we see here is you now got to begin to share your own burden and own shame as far as your history and laws. Everyone didn't set it at 7. So see, this is a bombshell. This is a bombshell today, folks. Right along with Donald Trump doing what he's doing. I mean, as far as that election stuff goes, here's another bombshell for you. In 1880, the age of consent was as low as 7 years old. Now, we watched all those Western movies, shows, etc. And that was around the time, right? Around the 1880s, it's kind of like a Wild Wild West world, right? Kind of, I guess you could say so, right? That's about right. 1880, kind of cowboy Wild Wild West world. So out of the Wild Wild West world, how do the guy that's riding on the horse with the revolvers on both sides, how does he come off his horse and get sexually aroused by a 7-year-old girl? How's a 17-year-old gal arouse a cowboy? How does all these guys in the Wild Wild West at the saloons come out of the saloons and get aroused at a 7-year-old gal? This is what was going on. And if there was not saloons, you still had all these men that had this Wild Wild West cowboy kind of mentality. Had to be. Had to be. Cowboys never ceased to exist. Let me say that again. The cowboys of this country have never ceased to exist. So with all these cowboys all across the country, in the 1880s, the year 1880, no one thought to fight and invade Delaware for being crazy, allowing the age of consent for sex to be at 17-year-olds, at 7 years old. You don't think that, where's all the cowboy in you right there? You are the cowboy the world needs, huh? Well then, cowboy, where were you at when the age of consent was set in one of your states, in one of the states in the country you live at? Where were you at to fight and invade and demand change in the state of Delaware in 1880 when the age of consent was set at 7 years old? Didn't hear about any Delaware invasions, cowboy. And masculine as you seem to be, how is it all these cowboys were all across the country and they did not object of the age of consent being at 10 and 12? Because what cowboy wants to have sex with a 10 and 12-year-old? And I know you were there, cowboys. So now I'm doubting your boyness, if you will. I'm doubting your cowboyness. I'm doubting your cowboy nature when you allowed the age of consent to be at 10 and 12 and as low as 7. So all the cowboys just sat back and let it happen. Some warlike men, some warrior-like men sat back and let it happen. Some men of war sat back and let it happen. There were men of war here in the 1880. Am I right or wrong? So all the men of war in the year 1880 sat back and watched the law for the age of consent, the laws for the age of consent to be set at 10 and 12 and as low as 7. All the men of war in the 1880s sat back and watched that happen. That's history. That's history, folks. It went into law. I'm sure the men of war was aware of it. But yet, Look how you're looking at R. Kelly. R. Kelly wasn't with no 7-year-old girl. But your history had the age of consent set at 7 years old. But yet, you act like R. Kelly is doing some new thing. Like he just a raunchy, funky old man. Nothing's more raunchy and funky than the age of consent for sex with being at 7 years old, where men can have sex with 7-year-old vaginas. There's nothing more funky and raunchy than a grown man doing that. By law. But yet you acting like R. Kelly is doing something strange and new. But yet you acting like R. Kelly got some kind of disease of the mind when he has never been with a 7-year-old girl. R. Kelly haven't even been with a 10-year-old girl or a 12-year-old girl, which was the majority of the age of consent for sex in 1880. This is your foundation. Your foundation does mean something. Yeah, it should. Your foundation should. Your foundation should mean something. You should consider it when you consider others. When you consider the R. Kellys of the world. Consider your history being at 10 and 12 and 7 years old for the age of consent. R. Kelly wasn't with no 7-year-old girl, but that law was set here in America for the age of consent.